on mute. The broadcast is now starting and passive listening mode has been enabled for all participants. Please note that this workshop is being recorded and the recording may be shared with others. The participant list and chat are private, meaning only the speakers and moderator can see the messages and participants' names. Log out anytime if you do not wish to continue under these conditions. Hello and a warm welcome to this special edition of our Minds on RBQM workshop brought to you by Cyntegrity's MyRBQM Academy. My name is Tamara. I'm the operations manager here at the Academy, and I'll be guiding you through this session today. Over the next 60 minutes, we will explore the topic responsible AI outcomes, validating performance, and protecting trial data. You can look forward to a mix of live polls and interactive brainstorming moments designed to encourage discussion and expand your expertise. And as always, we will wrap up with a question and answer session. Our speakers today, I am very pleased to introduce our guest speaker, Andrew Warrington, Senior Industry Advisor for Healthcare and Life Sciences at Microsoft. With more than 40 years of experience in drug development, 14, in drug development, ranging from biomedical research to digital therapeutic product teams, Andrew now supports European pharma clients in shaping their cloud, data, and AI strategies. At Microsoft, he helps organizations implement Azure-based platforms that not only speed up development pipelines, but also meet the highest standards in security and compliance. We are delighted to have him with us today. Hello, Andrew. And I'm also honored to welcome Professor Dr. Kai Eckert, Professor of Artificial Intelligence at Mannheim University, Germany. His research covers the application of natural language processing and AI in various fields, including cultural heritage, open science, smart cities, and life science. Kai advises industry partners on the application of AI in digital transformation processes with a strong focus on data and knowledge organization, robustness, and digital resilience. We are excited to hear your insights today, Kai. Thanks very much for being with us. Last but not least, our Chief Scientific Officer, Johann Proeve. With over 45 years of experience as a biopharmaceutical industry professional, Johann is widely regarded as the go-to expert for clinical data management and RBQM. Organizations appreciate him because of his implementable management strategies that help study teams identify critical processes and data, assess risks, and focus monitoring resources on the sites and activities where they are most needed. Good. Now a short introduction to the handling of this webinar platform for all those who are new to our workshop. Later in this session, I will activate a toolbar for you, and you will see it on the left side. Click on the icon with the mug and the pens, and then select the T in the box to open a text box. Click anywhere on the whiteboard, type in your ideas, and click OK to submit. Your input will appear anonymously on our whiteboard. And if you have any questions or would like to send comments to our moderators on the topics we discussed today, please use the chat box on the right side. Select the tab Moderators and send us your questions throughout the workshop. In a moment, I will share some quick troubleshooting tips for the audio connection in the chat to help ensure the best user experience here. Okay, thanks very much for your attention, ladies and gentlemen. That was it from my side. Now it's time to start with our workshop. Andrew, please. Excuse me, Johann. Johann is first. Introduce us, show us the agenda. What is on our plate today, please? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tamara, for your nice introduction. And yes, what is it that we would like to cover in the next 55 minutes or so? On the left-hand side, you see the agenda for today's webinar, and the topics we would like to address are the followings. So why responsible AI? Why now? Why is it important, and what is it that we can get out of it? Then providing some background on AI demand by pharma. So what is it that pharma really can use AI for? Then AI biases and countermeasures. So I think we will see a couple of examples where AI may be taken with a grain of salt. Then the AI risk management framework and a couple of key evaluation metrics that Kai will share with us. And then finally, in the last 10 minutes or so, looking into quality by design in action, two examples on AI-driven protocol review and AI-augmented subject profiles, and a summary finally, and hopefully we have some seconds left for questions and answers. And with that, I pass it on to Andrew, who will guide us through the first couple of bullet points.
So thank you so much for having invited me here and allowed me to speak on this webinar. My name is Andrew Warrington, and as mentioned earlier, I work as an industry advisor at Microsoft. I previously worked in the pharma industry across a number of roles, including preclinical research, clinical development, and even a 5-year stint as a quality management for validated computer systems. And I've been asked to speak about AI in a kind of a GXP context. So I'll touch a little bit on what our customers are already using AI for, what some of the risks are, and what frameworks and tool sets exist to help use AI on the cloud responsibly in this high stakes domain. First, setting context, and as a reminder to all of us, right, pharma productivity is low and has been getting lower. And this stat is from a couple of years ago, but it illustrates the point. We all know why this is. And it's basically that the easy drugs have already been done. And more specifically, targets are getting harder to find. Drugs to hit those targets are harder to conceive and to make. Often the disease treated is relatively rare, so patient populations are smaller, leading to clinical trials taking longer, leading to a less exclusivity sales period, and then all topped off with an indication and label which likely serves fewer patients than we would have hoped for. And when we look at these, they're like super hard to fix. And looking especially at the top left, right, clinical trials. I mean, how do you optimize clinical trials? Because I did a count once and I realized, that, and let me just first say that we have this picture that we drew up to kind of get a sense of how many different domains are there in clinical trials. And I did a count and realized that each clinical trial involves, let's say, 15 different organizations and 6 different systems of record. And possibly, if you're a sponsor, those organizations and systems of records are variable between the different trials you're running, right? And so a lot of time and human capital goes into just delicately holding the cards upright so this house doesn't fall over. And the idea should be, in the first place, let's have AI hold up some of those cards. Already start doing some of the drudgery work. And we're already starting to see AI have value in clinical trials. And I want to shout out actually to Cyntegrity here as one of the companies showing that it's possible by getting right into the thick of it and using AI to manage risk and quality. They're one of the first partners to pick up Microsoft's Our AI in Healthcare certification. So I went to the very end. Excuse me, I'll just...
Not yet, Andrew, please.
Yeah, no, we can continue talking still. So just giving a couple of customer examples. As early as 2023, we were already seeing massive savings and efficiency gains from just using large language models to wrap our heads around the data already amassed in clinical trials. So that knowledge mining use case is pretty well established and already getting better as we get into the age of agentic systems, which can leverage broader tool sets and do things like combine insights from multimodal source information, radiology images, etc. And Novo Nordisk has actually done something similar, which they've spoken about publicly, called their Found Data platform for secondary use of clinical data. But also Novo Nordisk is using AI to find new biomarkers. And this work was jointly published by researchers in Novo Nordisk and in Microsoft in Nature Communications Medicine. Using modern ML techniques, they found an algorithm which can predict patients' cardiovascular risk better than the best clinical standards available. And this is the kind of work that can be directly applicable to clinical trials for recruiting or in the design for endpoints. And we're seeing improvements on the operational side as well. In this case, where Syneos reduced time for clinical trial site activation by 10%. So I look at these and I think to myself, it's starting, but is it good enough? I mean, most pharma companies I speak with are looking to reduce their clinical trial times by years, not weeks. So somehow we need to get to AI, which is more than just the sum of its parts, which somehow collectively accrues up to significant efficiency by automating the repetitive tasks and reducing the dependency on human busy work. So I'm constantly asking myself, where can we trust AI in clinical trials? And I said that out loud to the next speaker, Professor Eckert, a couple of weeks ago, and he rightly reacted to it and said, you can't trust AI. So the real question is, where can we use it? And then I would add this other question. Not only where can we use it, but where can we trust humans to use AI in clinical trials? Because we humans are suckers and prone to trust anything that looks confident. And even if intellectually, we know we need to be skeptical, we can become complacent. It's called automation bias, a bias towards trusting that the machine is right. I mean, it has access to more information than I do, right? After all. An automation bias is actually just one of 17 different biases that I could find that AI could have. And I'm not going to go through them all. But bias is just a huge risk in AI when it comes to human health. And it's not the only risk, right? So how do we manage all this? And some guidance has emerged on what to look out for managing AI in a GXP environment. This one is applicable to medical device development, and it shows some interesting things. I mean, not only should we worry about bias, but also about the interaction and the interface between the human and the AI. So, I mean, thank you, this is helpful, but again, how? Fortunately, there are frameworks, such as this one from NIST, which is the basis for the responsible AI standard that we use at Microsoft and have. And the principles shown here are great, right? AI should be safe and secure and resilient and fair, etc. These make sense. And the NIST framework goes deeper and explains how to make these actionable. And they suggest a process for managing AI risk, which is to first map the risks linked to an AI solution, then measure the likelihood and impact, and then finally manage the risks while the AI is in use. So for example, with a large language model, we all remember when they were first launched. One might map a risk that it spews out something dangerous, a recipe for a bomb or something. Then one might measure the risk of that, the likelihood and its impact. And one might map, and then I would add here mitigate it, as we do at Microsoft with our Copilot, where we have some intelligent filters preventing, even if the large language model does spew something out that's dangerous, preventing it from making it all the way back to the end user. And then just manage this risk, which includes monitoring how the AI is performing, right? If those filters are catching tons of dangerous material, then it probably means there's some tweaks needed to the training of the AI. And we can get really concrete in managing this. At Microsoft, we built templates and tools for these things, and we've open sourced those as the Responsible AI Toolbox. So these are tools for each of the stages of map, measure, and manage. And if you're curious, you can take a look. But coming back to that topic of the interface between AI and humans, we also released this Human AI Interface Toolkit, or as we call it, the HAX Toolkit. And it has 18 different design patterns, which make human AI interactions safer and more trustworthy. And it includes things like AI should indicate back to the user what it can do and how well it can do it. It should, in its presentation and interaction, match social norms. It should also be clear why the AI did what it did. And you can jump into this toolkit as well, Microsoft Hacks Toolkit, and have a look. You'll find examples linked to all of them. So I should touch on security. Remember that like any application or computer system, AI, including Gen AI, is an attack surface. And this can't be underestimated. At Microsoft, we're picking up 78 trillion security signals per day, and we're tracking 1,500 unique threat groups. So we need to take security seriously, and we certainly do. But given the overwhelming scale of cybersecurity attacks against us and all of us, we established our Secure Future Initiative, where our CEO, Satya Nadella, laid out the following principles. Everything we do must be secure by design, secure by default, and operate securely. And he assigned 34,000 full-time engineers to work on security. And he put it in everybody's yearly objectives, including mine. If there's a conflict between any objective I have and security, he told us clearly, choose security. And I say all this because whatever your cloud, to operate, you need to know that they're protecting you as well as you would protect yourself. A quick close-up on GXP in a cloud world. GXP and systems validation is a shared responsibility. So depending whether you use infrastructure as a service or a platform as a service or a software as a service, more or less of that responsibility may fall on you. But for the cloud provider part, in our case, we have resources for you in a trust center. So you can go there and find our audit reports and resources which allow you to assess the risk of our operations and integrate that assessment into your validation. I think you'll find the same from other cloud vendors. And this is an approach that I think Cyntegrity takes as well, relying on their service agreements with us and our audit reports to cover the physical layer, et cetera. And then they build their validation on top of that in the upper layers. As well as audit reports, you can find all of our certifications in this trust center if you're curious to know it and you need help with the validation. So that was actually the whole kind of topic that I wanted to bring us through in the time that I have. And I think if it's all right, I'm going to move on to a quick poll. And the poll question is, in what area of clinical trials is there the highest value to be gained from AI in the near term? And I am actually deeply personally curious about this to hear what the audience thinks.
And I can already see the answers coming in. Thank you all very much.
Yep.
I just wait a little longer so everyone can choose an answer here. Good, okay. Thanks.
Yeah, can I react to that?
I'm presenting the results now. Just a second, Andrew. So
okay.
Here we go.
Oh, very good. So, so I hope the results are up. I'm really not surprised. I'm surprised the extent to which this matches what I keep hearing from our customers. I mean, obviously, design and planning, the better we could simulate a trial and test the protocol in silico, and the better we could predict the effects of a protocol on the success of the trial, I mean, the better we could go throughout. But the study data collection and review is where I'm getting a lot of signal. I think that whole feeling of checking the data quality with AI is a huge opportunity. But we also hear, you know, this one didn't get a high score, but we hear a lot about just medical writing in general. So I would put the submissions, including authoring, up there. There are so many solutions already out there available from different software vendors that are starting to generate very good things like clinical study reports. I mean, the quality of these experiments earlier on wasn't great, but they're getting to be very good now. So we're hearing a lot about that. But I totally agree. Design and planning. If we could nail design and planning, we would get really far really fast. And with that, I think I'll stop. And thank you for your time.
Thanks a lot, Andrew. And we are now coming to Professor Dr. Kai Eckert.
Yes, I'm here. So, thank you all for inviting me today. And I would like to talk a little bit about key evaluation metrics. So basically give you some information how you can make sense of results that are produced by an AI system, and hopefully give you some first idea. I also would like to react to the slide 15 that we saw with a question if we trust AI. I like that indeed very much. And yeah, bottom line for me is actually you can't trust an AI system. So in my opinion, so if you take one thing away from this talk or from this presentation, it is you can't trust it. It's a statistical word generator. It generates amazing words, sometimes very helpful, but you can't trust it. So the question should always be, where can we use such a system? I think one problem is that right now we hear a lot about the great potential, like we have seen now, the great potential that AI has and so on. And I fear, reacting directly to this, I fear this actually leads to a higher automation bias, as we heard. Because if we tell everyone constantly that AI is and will be great, people tend to expect it to be intelligent and helpful and are not critical enough to work with it. So I actually also like the poll that we have just seen, because when you can't trust such a system, it can nevertheless provide interesting and good ideas. So basically, just from the beginning, wherever you have a setting where you review input or you just get additional input and use it to maybe extend the system, to provide or come up with new and better ideas based on what you have seen. This is obviously something where you do not need to trust the system. It just provides a valuable input. So I think this is the right mindset to go into any analysis of AI systems and how and if you want to use it. Otherwise, I would also like to say that AI is actually a broad topic. So we have seen a lot of examples right now, and they contain things that are what we call today generative AI, especially the generation of text, which is what I also have mainly in mind right now, are systems that we use. But also other approaches, machine learning approaches that basically use different techniques and therefore have different strengths and different weaknesses. Nevertheless, whatever the system under the hood is, you can always come up with the same questions and you will always be able to get the same metrics that I'm talking about now to understand how the system works. And the main thing that you have to understand is, first of all, there can be good answers, correct answers, basically, and wrong answers. But there is not only one kind of correct. You have to be more specific in what you actually want to see. An example here is we want to understand if, for example, a patient has a certain illness or needs some specific treatment. And then you, of course, ask questions. Is the AI model identifying the right patients? Does it work in mission-critical cases? Is it flagging healthy patients incorrectly? And so on. And an important notion here is that the wrong answer basically leads to different results. Yeah? So if we have a false positive, So we have a healthy patient that is flagged as having a disease that is usually less of a problem than having failed to detect a disease in a sick patient. But it's not without problems, of course, because you also do not want to give a lot of patients the stress that they might have some disease and so on. So you can also not just say, okay, if in doubt, it should be classified as having a disease. No? So just as an example. And this already on this slide introduces two of these classes, these error classes that we have, the false positive classes, so wrongly identified as being of a class, and the false negative, wrongly identified as being of the negative class. These, in this case, introduced false positive and false negative examples are basically the cornerstones that we have to create all the next metrics that I show you. Of course, we also have the opposite, the true positive and true negative. And basically, whenever something is true in the beginning, it's good. So these are the good ones. We want to have them. A true positive is the model says yes to whatever the question is. Has cancer? Is this document relevant to my search? Does this belong to class 3? Whatever it might be. So it really doesn't matter. But if the model says yes, and it actually is a yes, that's a true positive. On the other hand, if the model says no, and it actually is no, that's a true negative. And this is what we want, ideally. And the bad ones are, in both cases, the ones where the model makes a mistake. And the key metrics that you still need, I have to say, this is not new. I hope some of these metrics are maybe even already familiar to you. The key metrics that we need to understand if a system works are accuracy, precision, recall, and the specificity that I would like to introduce. And you see here already that I brought some formulas, a little bit of math, but it's always the question about how, for example, the number of true positive cases and true negative cases relate to the overall number of assessments and so on. And I will try to make this understandable for you by just giving examples, and also would like to give you an idea how you can think about that, about these metrics. So we start with accuracy. Accuracy is often used, especially in the beginning. It is from the idea. So what can I take away of what accuracy actually is? It's the overall picture. How good does a system works? It's also the most intuitive metric. It basically says, if you look at this formula, we count all the correct decisions whenever the model is correct, true positive plus true negative, all the correct answers, and just relate them to the overall answers that we have seen from the model. So it basically is just the number of correct answers. This is useful. It gives you a good idea about how the model works, but it has it has huge problems whenever the data set is not balanced for obvious reasons. So just imagine you want to detect a really rare illness in the population, and you have tests and so on. If you would have a model that never ever detects this illness, it will always say patient is healthy. You would end up with a very high accuracy because it will be correct in the overwhelming number of cases, but it is not helpful at all. As soon as you do not have balanced data sets, accuracy is basically not usable anymore. And unfortunately, balanced data sets are the rule, and balanced data sets are the exception to the rule. So usually, in reality, you do not have balanced data sets. So let's look at a little bit more specific metric. The second metric is the precision. I call it here the certainty metric. It's basically how sure are we, if the model predicts a certain class, that this is actually correct. So think of this again. Let's take the example of a medical case. Whenever the model says this patient might have cancer, how often is it correct? If you look at the formula, this is reflected. We look at the true positives, And in this time, we relate it to the true positive plus false positive. So basically, all the answers whenever the model has actually said, oh, a person has cancer. That contains the actual true positives when they have it, but also the false positives where they actually do not have it. And the higher this rate is, that means the more often this answer is actually correct. So this is something that you really want to focus on when you want to be sure that the answer is correct, and you do not want to have a lot of additional cases that are actually falsely flagged. In these cases where you actually work with some detection, you usually want to have a high precision. And basically, whenever you talk about precision, you also talk about recall. So that's the typical combination, precision and recall. And recall is what I would call the completeness metric. So in recall, you ask a different question. How many of the actually true positive cases, like people who have cancer, for example, how many of them did we actually find? So we relate the true positives to the true positives plus the false negatives. So plus the cancer cases that we did not recognize with the model, but they are still there. So with a high recall, you want to have all of them that have that might have cancer or that have cancer, that should have been returned in this case. The obvious problem with recall is that you can easily create a system with 100% recall. You can just create a system that constantly says the person has cancer. We can think about another use case like information retrieval. Think about a search engine. You just can return all the results, all documents that you have in a database all the time. It's not useful, but it gives you a 100% recall because the relevance will always be within this set of answers. So you could now say, okay, then maybe a high recall is not necessarily what I want because I need the precision. But there are cases, as I said, where you really want to be sure that you got all of them, where you want to focus on recall. In information retrieval, this is quite, I think you can illustrate this quite nicely with two different questions you might have. If you want to get an overview, let's say, about all research papers for a certain topic, you usually want to have a high recall. Because you need all the research papers. You do not want to miss anything. Of course, you then have to live with a lot of papers that are not really relevant. You have to filter them out somehow. But in the end, you want to read all of them. If you have a specific question, like a factual question where you are looking for a source that answers this in a reliable way for you, you do not need all the papers that might answer it. You just need one, and it should be correct. So in this case, you would rather need a high precision and not a high recall. So these are two things that you always have to keep in mind. We will come back to this because they are basically mutual exclusive. One last thing, depending on your background, recall is also known as sensitivity in a medical context. So this is the same if you know sensitivity. That's the same as recall. And finally, also more from a medical context, in information retrieval, we do not use it that often, but you can, of course, also ask for the specificity, the true negative rate. So just with a recall, you basically ask how many of the actually true negative cases have been identified as negative. That's exactly according to what we do with recall for the positive cases. And can be interesting, especially if you are interested in identifying all the negative cases. And that's why we do not usually have it in information retrieval settings, because usually we are not interested in the number of irrelevant documents that have not been found. But in the case of, I don't know, patients who are healthy and you want to identify them as healthy, that is actually a relevant question. So, as I said, there is a trade-off, and this is true and will be true also for all upcoming and future AI applications. You basically always have to ask, do I want to focus on precision or do I want to have recall? I just see the question, Fn is false negative. Also, it's falsely classified as a negative example from the system. Yeah, so basically you can't have both, as I said. You can easily produce a lot of results, but then you will have a higher recall, but you will end up with a lot of irrelevant results as well. You have to wait through them, might not be what you want. You can try to focus on precision, less results, good quality, but you will miss things that would also be relevant if you focus on the precision. F measure, if you hear about that, is basically taking this into account. It's a weighted mean between both precision and recall, and tries to basically reflect this, like you want to have a good compromise. Yeah, I think I did this slide already. Depends on what you want to do. Just some words about fairness and reproducibility. If you now build projects around these metrics or want to use AI, fairness and reproducibility play a role here. With metrics, it's relatively easy. You should never just measure the overall result of your solution. Just create subsets of all your data, of all your cases that you have, and make sure that the metrics provide reliable, similar results for all of these subgroups. It might be that your model actually produces different precision, different recall for certain demographics, as we know. And this can be detected if you just check this. And regarding reproducibility, it's important that this is well documented and that you work with well-established metrics to make things comparable. And one last slide here is, I talk about metrics, I talk about numbers, and humans like numbers. It's something we can try to reach. We can measure our systems, and you often come to the conclusion that also humans never actually reach 100%. We know this in AI. It's called the inter-annotator agreement. So if you ask one person to actually do the classification based on the opinion of another person, you will also not get 100%. So it's often the perception that if AI reaches whatever a human can reach, then we have human quality. And this is not the case. You really have to look into what you actually get as a result and if you can actually use it. I put it here as AI is often more wrong than humans in certain ways. But this also boils down to the fact that metrics are not the goal. They are a tool that you can use to understand better how your systems work, but it's not the goal to get the highest possible metrics. The goal is your application, and you have to make sure that the AI model, for example, actually works in the way you intend it to work. So that's my conclusion. To basically summarize it, accuracy is only a very first look at a model, usually not enough. You have to understand the context of your application, and you have to understand if precision or recall is what you need more. You have to demand transparency regarding the metrics that are used to evaluate such systems. Metrics are the foundation that you can actually make informed decisions about the systems that you deploy, but metrics are not the goal. Bad results can guide you in the right direction. That's important. So bad results in this case are even more helpful. But if you get good results, that does not necessarily mean that you can trust the AI.
Thank you very much, Kai. I just see that there is one question here from the audience, and I just read it for everyone. If a metric drops after go live, what early warning signals tell us it's drift, not just random noise?
That's a very good question. It depends on how the system is used. So if you actually constantly retrain your model, I would actually see it as an indicator that you have model drift. There are more indicators, but I can't go into that right now, I think. That's the next webinar. But nevertheless, also these metrics, if you constantly monitor them, give you an indicator that something is wrong. So I would look into that further then.
Thanks very much for your answer, Kai. So we now would like to come to Johann.
Thank you, Tamara. And actually, I think we now have the scientific background that Andrew and Kai provided to us, and we can dig a little deeper into a couple of real-life examples. Actually, I just wanted to repeat what Kai just said, and I experienced that a couple of times already in my life. We always pretend that humans, whatever they do, are right in the first place, and we need to demonstrate that what the machine does, what AI does, is matching what the humans think. And I think we got to be a little careful in this context and not pretend that humans are always right. And with that, I would like to start with a whiteboard, actually. And for those of you that are involved in the clinical development, I have a whiteboard with a question on which areas in clinical development do you think are candidates for using AI augmentation? So anything that you already noticed, anything that you used, anything that you would like to use, would be nice to see this being jotted down here on this whiteboard for the next 3.5 minutes.
Thank you. Yes, and the whiteboard is open now. On the left side, please click on Tools and then the T in the box. Click anywhere on the whiteboard, please, and you can send us here your ideas.
So, Tamara, you can, yes, thank you. That's great.
I'm helping Johann, yes.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, while you are still thinking about those various areas, I see a couple of comments related to medical writing, document creation, submissions, lay summaries, report generation. And I must admit, I think this is definitely a good area because I just attended the DIA conference in Washington last week, and there were a lot of presentations on submissions and creating tables and graphs and listings and generating reports. So this is definitely an area that AI is going to find its way more so than currently. I see detecting data trends, finding anomalies in the data, detection of fraud, risk detection. So I think in essence, managing data to an extent that probably a human can hardly do, and in particular also where you either need a lot of statistical programming or programming in general that you can then do much faster without having all these programmers available that produce these areas. And risk detection and risk statements and controls. That is an area that we also work in. So I think I'm absolutely pleased to see the areas that you think are good for AI augmentation in the future. So I appreciate that. I will stop it because the whiteboard is filled with your ideas. And with that, I would like to go into 2 examples. of AI RBQM related examples, of course, because I'm a little biased. So usually what we see in reality is that our protocols these days have about 150 pages describing these various processes for the study. Those protocols then have to be read, for instance, by someone who is interested in implementing risk-based quality management, identifying the critical to quality factors, critical data and critical processes, linking then the risk to the CTQs, to the critical to quality factors, finding the best fitting acceptable ranges, so what has been called QTLs and KRIs in the past, and maybe also KPIs, key performance indicators, and identify appropriate mitigation actions, because what we saw in the past usually is a mitigation action is retraining the sites or retraining someone that did not perform. But I don't know whether Keith is on the call, but he always says the mitigation action, retraining is not really a good mitigation action. So be creative, think about other things that you could implement.
Yes, Keith is on the call, and if you want, I can turn him on as a participant.
You don't have to. I just wanted to refer to
if you like to start a short discussion.
Well, we can do that at the end, I think, because we are running short of time anyway. So all of the above that I just cited here can be a very cumbersome process and actually requires many hours of review. And I'm pretty sure that a couple of you went through that process and realized that it can be really, really painful and cumbersome. And I at least, and I'll show you an example, can help skimming through the protocol within minutes and identify the above parameters. Now, this is something that I did a couple of days ago in preparation for this webinar. I did the same exercise about a year ago, and I think Linda Bunskoten did this about a year and a half ago. And it's amazing, how AI, and I'm talking about ChatGPT in this particular case, but I'm pretty sure this is true for the others as well, how these systems developed over time. And I'll show you what I'm talking about. So what I did is I took a study synopsis for a phase 3 study, a randomized controlled trial of an antithrombotic drug. And I asked, can you please give me the following aspects of this particular protocol, 5 pages or so only. Give me the critical to quality factors, please provide me, and without the please, provide me with the critical data and critical processes, the key risks, the key risk indicators, and any mitigation actions that you can come up with. So it's a rather simple protocol. And what ChatGPT then did, as I said, within minutes, structured my questions into structured answers, and even gave me more than I asked for. So I asked for the critical to quality factors, and what you see here on the left-hand side is a list, and it may not even be the complete list of critical to quality factors based on that protocol. But what I really liked is on the right-hand side, providing the rationale, which I found really, really flabbergasting because I didn't ask for it. But obviously, since we used the system a couple of times already, ChatGPT realizes that this is a guy that is interested in risk-based quality management. And usually, he should ask for a rationale. So I'm going to give it to him for free. So you see all these CTQs and the rationale on the right-hand side. Now, I had the CTQs in place, manually derived from the protocol. And in this particular case, I must admit, it met all the criteria and actually has been more creative than I had been. So we got to be careful, review the CTQ factors in this case, check whether this is a complete list, check whether it's hallucinating. And we saw that, I think, in either Andrew's or Kai's slide. There was, I think it was Andrew. He had sort of a slide. There was hallucinations in there. And to be honest with you, I have seen hallucinations, and I'll show you an example later. Then it came up with the critical data, and you know, there's a critical to quality factors, and then one should identify critical data and the critical processes as well. And it came up with the data elements. These are the critical data, and again, providing me a reason, which I also find quite helpful because it makes life a little easier in the end. Then finally, in the third step, providing the critical processes, making sure that there's an informed consent and eligibility verification, that there's adjudication of the cardiovascular events, and so on and so forth. And I'm pretty sure that Tamara will share the slide deck with those that are in this webinar, so you can read through that and see what the system actually did.
Absolutely, the slide deck will come by email.
Terrific. Yeah, that's good. So then it did a risk and the risk scoring. So this is on the left-hand side, again, the risk, and it's not a complete list. I had to cut it out so that it fit onto this PowerPoint slide. It came up with a risk based on the critical data and critical processes, and it even provided an example of impact probability and yeah, whether this is detectability, I'm not 100% sure, probably not. It's more the severity. So this is sort of an area where someone should then look at and see whether this is meant to be detectability, and if so, then relabel it. If it's not detectability, then continue working in the system and ask for the next steps. And then it came up with the key risk indicators, could be also quality tolerance limits, or what we call these days the acceptable ranges. And again, a couple of examples with a threshold, whether we like the threshold or not. It was not so creative in the area of monitoring frequency, but you can always change that manually into shorter time intervals or into longer time intervals. But at least it's indicating that a monitoring frequency should be provided. And then a list of mitigation actions. And as I indicated, the mitigation actions should not be retraining of the site staff or retraining of the monitor or retraining of anybody involved in this trial, but rather coming up with some other indicators, other mitigation measures such as reminder tools or patient education, site engagement activities. I saw somewhere a laminated card, as a reminder for the site staff and so on. And then, I thought, oh yeah, this answers all my questions, but the system asked me, would you be interested in a couple of additional related analyses? So it wanted to provide me with a visual risk heat map, which you see on the right-hand side. So it didn't ask for it, but it came up with it. An Excel template to track the key risk indicators and the mitigations. I didn't want that because I know how Excel works. And the one-page RBQM strategy summary, which I also didn't ask for. But it asked, would you like any of these as the next steps? And I said, yeah, please provide me with a visual risk heat map. Now, this is not that impressive because there were only a couple of risks identified. But for a larger study, for a full protocol, I'm pretty sure that this looks much, much better. Okay, that was the first example, and the second one is referring to the subject profile. This is mainly for medical monitors, may also be used by data managers and sometimes central monitors. The medical monitors and the pharma and CRO organizations are responsible for the review of the subject profiles for identification of potential additional adverse events or safety signals. It's usually a manual review. This manual review, and I have seen that in my own life, these poor medical monitors, after reviewing about 20, 30 patients, they start not seeing the issues anymore. So this is really a painful exercise again, where if you go through one patient after the other, so after 2 or 3 hours, you really get tired and you mix up patient data, and this is not really a good process. Due to the amount of the data, potential issues are easily being overlooked, and over time, the rules may change. So something that was true for the first 50 patients may not be true for patient number 250 to 300, because the human brain is learning over time, and then all of a sudden changing the rules. So what might be an issue or what is not an issue? And in this case, again, AI may be able to help in the review process by checking the appropriate medical coding, for instance, so MEDRA coding, WHO drug dictionary coding, highlighting the discrepancies between medications and the underlying conditions. So the patient receives a certain drug, but why the heck is this patient receiving that drug? Because there is no such thing as a medical history finding or an adverse event that warrants the usage of this medication. Checking medical history findings versus adverse events findings, and pointing to data potentially being medical histories or adverse events. So going through, for instance, lab data, identifying those lab data that are outliers and therefore should be recorded as an adverse event. And this is an output. Actually, this is again from our system. Some of you may have seen that already. And it goes through the various aspects such as adverse event classification. In this case, it's talking about the coding with either this is with this is not against MEDRA, but it's against CT, whatever it is, CTC-AE, sorry. So it detected that the data and the coding were not in sync. Or in this case, a consistency between the medical history finding and the adverse events, indicating that actually the anemia is not an adverse event, because the anemia was already there prior to the patient randomization, and therefore should be recorded as a medical history finding based on the lab data that the sites also provided. And that was a set of two different applications of AI augmentation in the field of risk-based quality management. There are many more. There are more on the horizon, and from the whiteboard, I conclude that we at Cyntegrity have a whole bunch of additional tasks on our table to tackle in the future, because there are more interesting aspects related to risk-based quality management. So, in summary, I think from the three presentations, one can conclude that AI is here to stay. So this is not something that appears and then disappears again. This is here to stay. We have to be aware of the reliability of the output, and we have to be critical as humans. As I said, sometimes there are hallucinations. I did not say that. There was an example in this medical monitoring report where the system said the patient received metformin, but the patient never had any diagnosis of diabetes nor an adverse event of diabetes. And in fact, I looked through the data, and their patient never received metformin. I have no idea where the system got it from. So I think we got to be aware of that. On the other hand, we must be we must understand that we will never ever be 100% perfect, and we have never ever been 100% perfect anyway, also as humans. And we always need to weigh that against what AI can do and what humans can do, and move it up to a really reliable level, but not more than that. I think we should use it as much as possible, but not more than that. So I sometimes come across ideas, where you do something within seconds as a human. So in that case, don't try to apply AI, because that is overkill and doesn't really add value. Look at it as a supportive tool, or as we call it, augmenting tool, and learn how to use it properly. I think this learning aspect is something that we as humans, as users, should also keep in mind. And finally, and I was personally a little hesitant in the beginning, I must admit, but playing with it, seeing what it does, checking it, is really, really something that we all should do, because it's going to ultimately help us in things that we do not want to do manually anymore. And with that, Tamara, I think we are at the
at the question and answer session. Yes, right. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is the last part of our webinar here. And in the meantime, we've received some questions that I would like to read out loud now. How do you know when an AI module is good enough to inform safety or quality decisions? Who would like to pick that question? The answer to it.
So maybe I can start, because I worked in the medical coding area, which is a tiny little subsection of AI. And you have the adverse event, and you want to see a MEDRA code. And in the beginning, the system created a code, and humans, actually 2 humans, independently checked the data and fed back the corrected information into the system. And over time, the correct responses to any text that the system coded got up to a level of 95, 96%. And to be honest with you, that would be good enough, because that is what FDA accepts as a correct medical coding of adverse events. Whether we like it or not is a different thing, but at least that's an option.
Thank you very much, Johann. And there is one last question I would like to come to before we close. We are already a little bit over time. I'm sorry. Should we be concerned about the environmental impact of AI?
Why don't I take that one? As a company that's building the data centers, right? I think, yes, we should all be concerned about the environmental impact of AI. And I think there are just a couple of approaches that we can all take, 3 maybe. I think one is we try to use smaller and smaller models that you need less GPU and less power in order to do their inferencing. I think we aim to do more and more sustainable energy. And the last one is just transparency. So companies like ours that have the data about the power that's getting used need to continue to be super transparent about that, so that we can continue to have this social conversation. And we on our side also, the transparency helps us to remember that we have to keep on task with that stuff. I think it's a great question. It's a concern for all of us.
Many thanks for the answer, Andrew. So, and before we close, I would like to invite you to our upcoming in-person event, the Leadership Roundtable on Implementing Quality by Design with AI, which will take place in September in Frankfurt, Germany. Join Microsoft and Cyntegrity for a high-impact roundtable on how AI-powered quality by design and risk-based quality management deliver inspection-ready trials without blowing the budget. So this exclusive free event is designed for leaders in clinical research, quality assurance, and digital transformation and data science. The attendance is limited to 40 participants. And as a webinar attendee here, you will receive priority access. So don't hesitate, apply for an invitation today, and we look forward to hearing from you. Yeah, a big thank you to our speakers, Kai, Andrew, and Johann, for the great insights today. And of course, thanks to all of you, our valued participants, for your interest and attention. We hope to see you again at our next webinar, which is next week, Tuesday. That is the Act on Quality by Design workshop, episode number 6, Centralized Monitoring is about being proactive. And then again, the week after, 9th of July, the Minds on MyRBQM workshop, episode 36, trial level risks. So it would be great to see you again. Thanks to all our speakers, Andrew, Kai, Johann, and to the audience for their attention. See you soon in our next workshop. Take care and have a nice rest of the day. Goodbye.
Goodbye. Thanks a lot.
Goodbye. Thank you.
Goodbye. Thanks.